I've talked about the Genovese Syndrome before, but I wanted to go fully in depth for some people. Seeing as Shaycarl keeps mentioning it, a lot of people have questions about it. Genovese Syndrome, Bystander Effect, crowd theory. Basically what that means is that if something is going on, people who are walking by are more prone to just walking away rather than actually doing something. Most times brought on by the fact that they don't actually know whether or not something's going on, and they don't want to be that guy who walked up and overreacted. There have been a lot of cases where people have actually died because of this, most notably Kathryn Genovese. On the night of March 13th, 1964, Kathryn Genovese, also known as Kitty, was coming home after a night of being a manager at a bar in Queens. She pulled into the parking lot of the Long Island Railroad at about 3:15 a.m., which is about 100 feet from her front door. So then she leaves her car and she starts walking home. She was very quickly approached by a man named Winston Mosley. As soon as he approached her, she became very frightened and ran away. He gave chase, caught her, and stabbed her in the back twice. She screamed out, "Oh God, he's stabbing me, help me." March in the city, so it was kind of cold, so a lot of windows were closed, but only about a handful of people actually heard what was going on. Some people thought they were like, you know, rowdy friends coming home from the bar who were just deciding to scream, which happens in New York all the time, but some people actually looked out their window and saw that something was going on. Two people then called the police. One of them was actually stated as saying, "A girl got beat up, but she's up now and she's staggering away. Could you please go check her out?" Now the thing about New York City cops is that if they think it's an immediate issue, they will run right over. But if they do not think that this is an immediate need, they will take an hour to get there. So apparently this call did not register a big need for them, so they just kind of didn't show up. Only one of those people actually noticed that she was being stabbed, and he did call the police, and it was somebody else who actually leaned out of his window and yelled out, "Hey, leave that girl alone." So Winston Mosley got scared, hopped in his car, and drove away. So she stands up staggeringly and walks to the rear of her apartment building where she usually walks in. The problem with this is that she took herself out of the sight of anyone who knew she was in danger. Then she walked up to her apartment building. The outside was unlocked, so she walked in there, and as she was getting out her keys to enter the inside door, she collapsed. 10 minutes later, Winston Mosley drives back, then begins systematically checking the train station, the parking lot of that train station, and then begins opening doors in apartment buildings. And he opened one up, and there she was, completely collapsed. So then out of the view of anyone who had just stopped in the time before, and anyone who might have been walking along on the street, he then began stabbing her again. It was like she collapsed here, and then there was a door, and then there was a staircase, and there were more people. And a lot of those people did in fact hear her. There's even evidence to suggest that one of them opened the door, looked down, saw what was happening, and still closed his door, unsure what to do, and just kind of just let it go on. Within those few minutes, Genovese was stabbed several times, then raped, then he stole $49 from her wallet and left. It was only then that one of the people in the apartment called the police, said, "A woman has been stabbed here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if she's still alive. Could you please come?" They were there minutes later, and they got her into an ambulance on the way to the hospital at about 4:15 a.m., exactly 1 hour from when she had initially arrived in the parking lot. She, unfortunately, however, died on the way to the hospital. A couple of weeks later, Winston Mosley was actually caught in the middle of a burglary. As soon as they brought him in for questioning about the burglary, he admitted to killing Kitty Genovese, 2 other people, several rapes, and several other burglaries because he did not care. One of the other murders, someone else had already been tried and convicted and was sitting in jail for. In the other murder, he killed her with an ice pick, and because the wounds were so clean, they assumed that it was a gun, except that they couldn't actually find the bullets. And since they couldn't figure out how those wounds were created, it became a cold case very quickly. And it wasn't until he admitted to it that they even figured out what was going on. It was shortly thereafter that they actually found out he was a pretty regular guy. He was a business machine operator and a family man. He in fact left his wife and kids in bed at 2 a.m. to go find a victim just because he felt like he wanted to kill a woman. And the only reason he had decided on a woman was because they don't fight back so hard. Great guy. And despite the fact that he had so many crimes to his name, he had never actually been caught once. He had no criminal record to speak of. He just walked up and just admitted to this crime because it was the first time he'd ever actually been taken in for something. 2 months later in 1964, he was tried and convicted for her murder as well as the other 2, and he was sentenced to death, and the courtroom cheered. However, 3 years later in 1967, a court of appeals was convinced that he was actually mentally insane, and since his mental condition was not brought up at trial, they had to take the death penalty off the table. So right now he's actually in jail for an indeterminate /life sentence. It's never actually been labeled. So he's still completely up for parole. In fact, it was just this past November of 2011 that he was again denied parole, and he doesn't come up again until November of 2013. So now the question comes up, why is this case so famous? Well, one, it's because of misinformation. Because the original New York Times news article said that almost 38 people saw and heard the attack, knew what was going on, and still did nothing. When in fact, the entire number of people who actually saw what was going on was in fact about 12 people in the 2 different sites. No one saw both attacks, and 4 people out of those 12 did do something. The bystander effect, or crowd theory, or Genovese syndrome, it's a true fact. It really does happen because people are not 100% sure what's going on. That show, what would you do? All it is checking the bystander effect. It's, here's a situation, it's a bunch of actors, and then you just watch the people around them as they react. Does somebody walk up? Does somebody say something? Does somebody stop the situation that's going on, or do they continue on with their day? And in most cases, they do continue on with their day, and it's sad and it's scary that you might be in that situation someday where you need a passerby to help you. And statistically speaking, most of them won't help you, as sad as it is to say. There have been so many cases where somebody collapses for whatever reason, or is hit by a car for whatever reason, and they're lying in the street begging for help, and people just walk on because they don't know what's going on. They're not 100% sure that this is a situation where they need to help, or if they're going to be in trouble because they stepped up to say something. And scientists have also found that another factor for why this happens is that some people just flat out can't deal with that type of a situation. They see a situation that should only happen in movies. Instead, it's happening right there on the street in front of them, and their brains just kind of go haywire. So if you were in a situation like that, if you saw something like that, would you have stepped up? Would you have done more? Or do you believe, like most people, that you really don't know how you're going to react until you're actually in this situation? Comment below. I absolutely love you guys. My scoops are beautiful. Please leave suggestions for other things you would like to see. Also, please remember to like and favorite and subscribe so you can see more. I'm so sorry about this punishment. It's been put off for so long, but there's a weather advisory. If we go outside, we basically get a ticket immediately, and I can't afford to pay that. So I love you guys, but yeah, in the interest of the law, I have to wait. I absolutely love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.